He's the best in the business when it comes to evaluating the college players. Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl is with us today on Locked On Lions.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I welcome in everybody. It is Locked On Lions on the Locked On Podcast Network. A Friday, Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, and a Saturday, May 6th. Matt Dery with you. Thanks for joining us, making us your first listen each and every day. And of course, following us wherever you get your podcasts, and following me on Twitter at Dery Speaks, at Locked On Lions, the Matt Dery Facebook fan page, and the Locked On Lions YouTube channel. We are getting right into it right now. This is the guy whose opinion I value more than anybody. Jim Nagy has seen all of these players. He's been an NFL scout. He's been the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl for many, many years. And he joins us today to talk a little Lions draft and what they did last weekend. James, always a pleasure, my man.
Matt, great to be back on Talking Lions.
What'd you think, my man? It was a kind of a weird first day. I don't think anybody expected a running back at 12, let alone them saying afterwards, hey, if Gibbs was there at 6, we would have taken him. A tight end. Certainly getting a quarterback, which is something the Lions never seem to do in the draft. This one had some roller coaster to it, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a weird day overall, just not for Detroit, not just for Detroit. You talk to people around the league. I mean, the consensus was, most everyone we talked to felt like between that 12 and 15 range and 40 to 45, you were really getting basically the same player. In that range, there was very few true like blue chip guys in this draft, and so it just it was kind of a pick your poison. That's why things came off, kind of different on Thursday night. But it sure made for a lot of excitement. It was a fun draft to watch.
Jahmyr Gibbs gets the call at 12. Lions trade back. Brad Holmes had said, hey, listen, if we couldn't find a trade partner, we love this guy so much. Yeah, I guess we would have taken him at 6. But what were your impressions of them getting a running back first and then obviously trading DeAndre Swift?
Yeah, I mean, at 6, I would say I probably would have taken Bijan Robinson myself if I were taking it back at 6. But Gibbs is a really explosive player. I've had a chance to see him play live a couple times this fall, being going up to Tuscaloosa. Really explosive player, right? Has some versatility. Didn't spend a ton of time watching his tape just because he wasn't available to us here at the Senior Bowl. But watching him play live, the juice shows up. I was at his pro day. Man, the guy's super electric. So he'll be a fun player. He'll be a fun player for Lions fans to watch. I put a tweet out there like the night before the draft, maybe, that I thought Bijan could be a really cool pick. Throw Bijan in jersey number 20 and carry on the Lem Barney, Billy Sims, Barry Sanders tradition in old number 20. But no, they've had a great tradition of backs in that franchise, and hopefully Jahmyr's the next one.
Appreciate the tag, by the way, on that tweet. I've made it now that you're tagging me on your Lions tweets. I love it. All right, so tell me about...
Gotta do it, Matt. You're one of my go-to Lions guys. I gotta do it.
I appreciate that, Jim. I appreciate it. Gibbs in the slot, Gibbs out wide. Are we seeing something here where this guy's not just going to be, a bell cow in the backfield? And obviously, they have David Montgomery and some other backs that they like, but do you see sort of this hybrid role for him?
He certainly has that. And again, if you're taking him up there at 12, I would think so. Without talking to those Lions guys, he has that in his skill set. He's an easy catcher of the football. Again, there's no reason with his cutting ability and his ability to drop his weight, he should be able to run just about every route out of the slot. So yeah, and he did a lot of that at the pro day. He saw the route running was on full display in that Bryce Young throwing script that they had there in Tuscaloosa. So yeah, I mean, I would guess he gives them a true change of pace from David Montgomery, who's more of a downhill hammer, and you always ideally you got your backs complement each other, right? So a nice compliment there, and a guy that they can probably move around and do a lot of different things with.
Do you like Jack Campbell? I know it's sort of in that, and Lions history as well as anybody, sort of in that Spielman mode. And what'd you think about him at 18?
Well, shoot, if they could get half of Chris Spielman out of growing up watching Chris Spielman. It's one of my favorite players growing up in middle school and high school. If they got half of Chris, then they nailed the pick. Chris Spielman's one of the all-time greats. So, but no, he's a guy that he's kind of a throwback size-wise. You don't see linebackers as big as Jack anymore. Big body, long, nice frame. The more you watch him, he kind of grows on you athletically. You start watching him and you think, it's classic Mike linebacker. Is he just a two-down player? That kind of what goes through your head. And then the more you watch him, you're like, he takes up space with that frame. We had a guy like that when I was in Seattle, KJ Wright, who just long, plays pass lanes, has good feel, and he can really run it down in the flats. You see when they clear the ball out in the flat, he can go get it. So I don't think you draft a linebacker up there in the teens if you don't feel like he's a three-down player. So obviously they feel like he's that guy. And coming out of that Iowa program, talking to those guys about Jack before the season, he's got all the intangible stuff. And talking to teams, he did a great job in the interview process and everything well. So he should be a guy that can command their defense and have the green dot on his helmet and call things as well, which there's a ton of value in. So they obviously love the player because they took him where they took him.
It's interesting because last year they were so excited about Malcolm Rodriguez, and certainly they're bringing Alex Anzalone back, but I guess they don't care about what the depth chart looks like. If they think this is the best player for them and a culture fit and all of that, they're going to take him. And, Rodrigo now, when's he really going to be on the field? Because you got Anzalone and you got Jack Campbell, right?
Yeah, you can't have enough good players, though, Matt. I mean, again, the teams that I worked for over my 18 years, I feel like the mistakes we made, a lot of them were because we reached to address a particular need, and we passed on better football players to fill that hole. And so, to me personally, philosophically, like I lean way more into the best player available than need, drafting for need. So, I understand it. I understand why they did it.
Sam Laporta, tight end. So many good ones. And you and I talked before the draft about some of the ones that you liked and some that were at the Senior Bowl as well. But where did you have Laporta ranked, and how do you like the fit in Detroit?
Yeah, it was a great class. I mean, you look down through really fourth, fifth round, there were some good tight ends coming off the board that are going to be at minimum good number 2 tight ends in the league. It was one of the deeper classes we've seen. Obviously Dalton Kincaid ended up being the only first rounder. And I think teams waited a little bit because they knew there was depth at the position. Like, why take one up in the first when you can get a good one in the second, third, or fourth? So I think that's what happened to that position. No, Sam's a versatile player. He can play attached on the line of scrimmage. You can bump him out and have him run routes in the slot. He's got a little run after catch to him. So again, another good solid pick. And it's obviously a guy they targeted because they probably took him a little more than at least where the consensus was for Sam. But man, if that's the guy they want, go get him. I don't argue that at all.
Laporta versus Mayer. How did you look at that before the draft?
Similar guys. Like, neither's real flashy player, but really dependable hands. They both catch the heck out of it. Laporta might have a little bit more run after catch. Mayer might get the slight edge in blocking, but they were close. Those two guys were close.
They get Brian Branch a lot later than folks thought he'd go. And again, just like you said, with all these defensive backs that they've signed in free agency and getting Tracy Walker back healthy, partly you say, wait a minute, that's a crowded secondary, but is that another one of those value picks where you go, oh my gosh, he's too good. You can't pass him up. Go get him.
Yeah, this was their best pick to me. In terms of value, getting the player where appropriately, where even lower than he was projected to go. Again, Brian's another guy I watched a lot down here in the state of Alabama, but never really focused on because we knew he wasn't going to be eligible for the Senior Bowl. But I've seen him play a lot of football, both on TV and in live up there in Tuscaloosa. And then again, being at the pro day, man, he had a great workout. This kid is a really good athlete. He ran what he ran. He ran a 4.58. Had he touched in the 4.4s, you would have thought maybe he had some outside versatility at corner like Minkah Fitzpatrick. There were some Minkah Fitzpatrick comparisons thrown out there, and that's what when I was in Seattle, Minka was one of our top players on our board that year because we felt like he could play outside, he could play the nickel, he could play free safety. Again, I think the one area where Brian probably you wouldn't want to put him out there now is outside, because I think the speed would get exposed a little bit. But when you got him in the nickel and he's got protection over the top, the speed's not an issue. He's got great transition skills, really quick in and out of stuff. He can drive on routes. He's got playmaking ability on the ball, and then again, because he has such good eyes, you can play him from depth and put him back there at safety, and he can range around with his anticipation more so than just flat out speed, and make plays back there. So really good, versatile piece. I know they've added some people in free agency with Courtney CJ Gardner-Johnson, but you can't have enough good DBs. You just can't. They'll find a place for this guy.
All right, so you heard Jim say Branch was their best pick. I want to ask him about Hendon Hooker. We'll do that coming up next. First, though, Locked On Lions today, brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, you don't want all the calories or fat, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and just 17 grams of protein with our friends at Built Bar. They are the best. You got to try them at either Built.com or go to Walmart today or even Sam's Club. Get yourself a 13-bar box with all our great flavors, including brownie batter and churro. That's Built.com. Built Bar, they are the best. Jim Nagy with us from the Senior Bowl, the executive director. They do such a great job down there. Another successful Senior Bowl just a couple of months ago. All right, Jim, you know this in Detroit. Sometimes, what's the old adage? The most popular players are the backup goalie for the Wings and the backup quarterback for the Lions. And here's Hendon Hooker. Jared Goff's the guy, but when you saw Hooker go to Detroit, what was your reaction?
I was happy for Hendon. I think that's a really good landing spot for him. There was some talk there leading up to the draft, and there's always a lot of nonsense going around in April that, and part of it was Hendon might go in the first round, and I would have loved it for Hendon. He was down here at the Senior Bowl, met him last summer at the Manning camp, went up to Knoxville, spoke to their team in August, spent some time with Hendon after that practice, and then obviously had a week down here with him. So love the guy. It's a great spot behind Jared Goff. I don't get to watch a lot of tape, NFL tape, but obviously I watch the Lions a lot on TV, being a native Michigander and lifelong Lions fan. And really seemed like Jared played well down the stretch, right? And so it's not a situation where Hendon's going to be pushed down the field too early, which I think can always derail college quarterbacks. There's a ton to like about Hendon. There's no getting around that offense at Tennessee, as prolific as it is in the college game, and Coach Heupel does an unbelievable job. It is a little bit of an apples to oranges conversion to the pro game. So there'll be some, Hendon's going to have to be developed, and he's going to have things to learn. But he's got a great skill set, and he's going to be learning under a really good player in Jared Goff, who is probably, mature enough and comfortable enough and secure enough in his position on the football team where he's going to help Hendon. At least I hope he would. So it's a great spot. What happens with quarterbacks, a lot of it's where you end up. It's not so much about the talent. It's about, the organization around you and the fit and the development. So to me, it seems like Hendon, I don't know if Hendon could end up in a better spot than Detroit.
What's your philosophy on this? Patrick Mahomes sat for a whole year behind Alex Smith. Brad Holmes said on a radio station the other day, we might still be looking for quarterbacks. They could add Teddy Bridgewater, have Nate Sudfeld, and maybe Hendon just red shirts. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it just depends on that injury, Matt. We don't know where that's at, right? I mean, there was some clips of Hendon, back on the field throwing a little bit, obviously gingerly a little bit. He wasn't pushing off and just letting it rip. But so we don't know when that's going to be. But I always go back to, in terms of like quarterback development, is another Andy Reid guy, and that's Donovan McNabb. This is back, in the early 2000s or 99, whenever that McNabb was picked. He actually traded for Doug Peterson, the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Doug, when I worked for the Packers out of college, when I was leaving Michigan, got my first job with the Pack, and Doug was our number 3 quarterback, and Andy was our tight ends coach. And so when Andy got that Eagles job, he traded for Doug when he drafted Donovan. And there was an understanding that, listen, Doug, you're going to come in, you're going to teach the young guy. We're not a good football team. We're going to take our lumps, and it's going to be on your shoulders. These losses are going to be on you. And then when we look to the point of the season where we're probably out of it, then we'll put Donovan in, and it won't be on his shoulders. The Philly fan base won't be all over Donovan McNabb. So I've always thought that's the best way is don't push the rookie out there if you don't need to, if he's not ready to. I always think it's beneficial. We're just not at that place in the NFL anymore. It's so different than it was even 20 years ago when that happened with Donovan. So, but I do think the injury in Goff's play last year, I think that's going to buy him a little time.
You said you had a lot of conversations with him when he came down. Obviously, he didn't participate in the game or the practices at the Senior Bowl, but just was sort of like a sponge. What were your talks like with him? Everybody seems to say he's just an unbelievable guy.
Yeah, really genuine guy. And again, we've never done it before in the 5 years we've been here, bringing an injured player. And I don't know if we'll ever do it again. It's not a great precedent to set. It's a slippery slope, right? I mean, there's going to be agents wanting to take advantage of that. So I've been pretty clear from the get-go that this was a one-off deal for Hendon. I think the quarterback position lends itself to the meeting room time, to the interview time. It's so paramount for those guys. So, and Hendon earned it, right? He was one of the faces of college football last year. Probably would have been in New York for the Heisman had he not gotten injured. And I just felt like he deserved that time. So yeah, the first word I would use is genuine. He's he's not a huge personality, but he's very humble, man. I mean, for the success he's had, he's in 2 years in Knoxville. He's a Tennessee legend. I mean, what he did with this football team and kind of restoring the Vols back to a place of prominence in college football this year was huge. And just a genuine dude. I know the media, you guys are going to love him. He's a really easy guy to like.
Tell me about these last three guys. Third round for Broderick Martin, the D tackle. Colby Sorsdal in round 5, the offensive lineman, and then Antoine Green, which I like this pick, the North Carolina wide receiver in round 7. What did you think of those?
Yeah, Martin's a big space eater, 2-down player, 2-down nose tackle. A gap to A gap, takes up space. Cody, I don't know at all. He was off our radar at the Senior Bowl. Never put my eyes on him, so I can't comment. And then Antoine Green, we watched Antoine. He kind of fell behind our cut line, below our cut line a little bit, but a guy that ran like 10.9, 100 meter out of high school, which is decent for a big receiver. He was kind of the number 2 guy there for UNC behind Josh Downs, their playmaker who went, I think, in the 3rd is where Josh went. But no, Antoine's has made some big plays down the field for Drake May, and he's got a chance. He's got a chance to make it. But like all these late round receivers, it's going to come down to special teams, right? So sometimes the hard part with those guys who have been good college receivers is getting them to buy into the special teams part, and that's his path to the roster. In my opinion, for all 6th, 7th round wideouts, you better get something out of them in the kicking game, and so we'll have to see.
And on the UDFA front, Mo Ibrahim from Minnesota, the running back, that's not a bad fit for Detroit. A guy that can help with depth, right?
Yeah, Mo's a great college back. For us, our goal is to get every player drafted. Doesn't always happen that way, but we've had over 100 guys drafted over the last 3 years, over 40% of the draft over the last 3 years. And Mo was really like the next back up for us. We took a couple hits at the position injury-wise, and he's such a good runner, man. But there's just so many miles, so much tread that's off the tires now. And more so than that, there were some injury concerns medically that we just felt like there was a good chance that Mo would go undrafted, and that's why he didn't get an invite. But certainly was, in terms of college players, certainly deserved to be here. His college resume was incredible, however many straight 100-yard games. So, yeah, I mean, if you're just grading the player now that he's in the building and you don't care where you get him, right? At least you shouldn't. I don't care if a UDFA outperforms a second or third round pick, the UDFA should make the roster. So yeah, he's a guy that could definitely stick there.
Final thing for Jim Nagy. All right, draft is done, free agency's done. You look at all these teams in the NFC North. Well, all of them, 4 of them. How do you view Detroit right now? Are they the favorites to win this thing?
There's just there's some uncertainty. I think they're in a great position if they can build off what Coach Campbell and that staff did last year. I think they did a great job, and they're definitely, one of those teams that's kind of on the ascent. I think Chicago has had a really good offseason. We'll see. Sometimes you think they have a great offseason, it doesn't materialize in the fall, but I think it will. I think Chicago's done some nice things. I think the Green Bay thing hinges on Jordan Love. And talking to guys inside that building that I'm close with, I mean, they're really excited about Jordan Love. Let's not make any mistake. They didn't look to unload Aaron Rodgers because they didn't think they had a guy coming. I mean, they said he makes some. I'll edit myself here, Matt. He makes some holy crap throws in practice that not many guys can make. So it's going to hinge on Jordan Love for sure. And then in Minnesota, they had such a great year last year, but they're in a little bit of a rebuild. It seems like on the defensive side of the football. Brian Flores coming in there to be the defensive coordinator is going to be huge for them. He's in my mind, the best defensive coordinator in the league. But they're just personnel-wise, they're a little bit behind. And then, offensively, they're just going to have to outscore people. So they had that great rookie coaching year by Kevin O'Connell. But to me, the division's up for grabs, and Detroit should be right in the thick of that. If they can pick up where they left off last year, it should be a really fun year for Lions fans.
Jim, you're the best. You never disappoint. We appreciate your time, and all the best as you get ready for next year's Senior Bowl. I know you're going to do a great job as always.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, man. We'll be getting up there to Michigan this summer. I can't wait. I miss
nice.
it.
Absolutely. There he is, Jim Nagy with us, Executive Director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. Does an awesome job. Nobody knows the talent like Jim, and they always bring best players that they can to the Senior Bowl and take great care of them and get them ready for that next level. And we appreciate you being with us here on this Friday edition of a Locked On Lions.